Welcome to the Summer Food Service Program Camp Training hosted by the Oregon Department of Education Child Nutrition Programs, also known as ODE-CNP. This session is specifically for sponsors of residential summer camps and non-residential summer camps participating in the SFSP and which are not operating a site as open or restricted open. The objectives of this training is to assist sponsors of camps in operating the SFSP successfully by identifying the specific information applicable to camps. During this training, we'll present information on site eligibility, participant eligibility, meal service types, and record keeping. A camp is defined as a residential summer camp or non-residential day camp which offer a regularly scheduled food service as part of an organized program for enrolled children. In residential camps, participants spend the duration of the organized program in a 24-hour supervised care setting and receive a regularly scheduled food service as part of the program. Sponsors of non-residential campsites must offer a continuous schedule of organized cultural or recreational programs for enrolled children between meal services. Campsites may not use area eligibility to establish site eligibility. Additionally, for-profit camps are not eligible to participate in the SFSP. For participant eligibility, camps are only reimbursed for enrolled children who meet free or reduced price eligibility standards. Please refer to the Summer Food Service Program Basics, Enrolled Sites Participant Eligibility, and Documentation Training for more information on how to determine participant eligibility. With ODE-CNP approval, camps may claim reimbursement for serving up to 3 meals or 2 meals and 1 snack to eligible children each day. Therefore, a campsite may not claim reimbursement for snacks on days that it claims reimbursement for breakfast, lunch, and supper. Alternately, a campsite may not claim reimbursement for a 3rd meal on days that it claims a snack for reimbursement. As camp reimbursements are based on the number of meals or snacks served to children who are eligible for free or reduced price meals, sponsors of camps must maintain the documentation that demonstrates the free or reduced price eligibility of the children they claim reimbursement for and must make it available for review by the state agency. Camps may charge non-income eligible children a separate fee for meals. Common meal service styles for camps are family style and cafeteria style meal service. Camps offer an ideal setting for implementing family style meals, provided that adults are available to assist children during the meal if needed. Serving family style meals can help children develop good eating habits through the personal example provided by supervising adults. If a family style meal service is allowed by ODE-CNP at a campsite, the sponsor must ensure that a sufficient amount of food is placed on each table to provide the required portion size for each of the food components for all children at the table and also program adults supervising the meal service. Children should initially be offered the full required portion of each food component. When a child does not initially accept the full required portion of a meal component, it is the responsibility of the supervising adults to encourage each child to accept the full required portion for each food component. For example, if a child initially refuses a food component or initially does not take the full required portion of a meal component, the supervising adult should offer the food component to the child again. For more information on serving family-style meal service, please review the SFSP Nutrition Guidance Manual. A link to this manual is located in the video description. In cafeteria style, participants select food from a cafeteria line. Food is not available at the dining table. Cafeteria meal service operates as follows. Participants must select the minimum required amounts of all required components their first time through the cafeteria line, and adults must supervise the cafeteria line to ensure each participant selects at least the minimum required portions of all required food components. There are specific record-keeping requirements for camps. The next slides discuss these specific requirements for pre-operation documentation, meal count records, and racial and ethnic data collection. SFSP documentation starts even before a site begins to operate SFSP. During this time, sponsors must ensure that documentation to set up the sites is being saved. This includes participant eligibility documentation, the free meal policy statement, training documentation for all staff, sanitation inspection requests, pre-operational site visits, and camp promotional materials. Some documentation, including the training documentation and the promotional materials, may also be collected during SFSP operations. At the time of initial application to participate in the SFSP, all camps are required to submit a written free meal policy statement. The template for this policy statement is on the Becoming a SFSP Sponsor webpage. Camps that charge separately for meals also must include in their written policy on free meals that explains that the camp uses the USDA eligibility standards for family size and income levels at the level of reduced price or free school meals, describes how the camp accepts income eligibility forms from campers and assures that children whose families receive SNAP, FDPIR, or TANF benefits are automatically eligible for free meals, describes how the camp will collect payments from children who must pay the full price for their meals, and how the camp will ensure that children receiving free meals are not overtly identified, and assures that the camp has a hearing procedure for families who want to appeal a denial of eligibility for free meals, and assures that if a family requests a hearing, the child will continue to receive free meals until a decision has been made by the hearing official. Participant eligibility documentation is required since sponsors can only claim meals for participants that meet free or reduced price eligibility guidelines. This documentation includes confidential income statements provided by each individual camper and/or school lists of a participant's eligibility. Training documentation is required to show that all SFSP staff, including all administrative, monitoring, and site staff, have been provided with annual training before they undertake their responsibilities. Documentation must include the dates of training, the signatures of all attendees, and the topics that were covered at each training. Please note that any new staff training that takes place after the initial SFSP staff training has been completed must also be documented. During the pre-operational period, it is important for sponsors to notify their local health department in writing of all prospective site locations. ODE CMP requires that sponsors, in written communication to the local county health or sanitation inspectors with all locations of sites as well as the operation dates and times. If a sponsor has a new site or sites that had operational problems in the previous year, the sponsor must complete a pre-operational visit at the site. The USDA pre-operational visit form is shown on the screen and must be the form used unless prior approval from ODE is given for an alternate sponsor-created form. This form and all forms mentioned in this training are available on the ODE CMP SFSP webpage. The link to the page is available in the description section below. Once operations start, sponsors must collect documentation that verifies the program is running as required. This includes food service documentation, meal count documentation, sanitation inspection reports, site monitoring documentation, civil rights documentation, and financial management documentation. Food service documentation helps to show that nutritious meals meeting the meal pattern were served. Documentation includes the working menu, which must detail actual foods that were served, and any substitutions to the planned menu. Additional supporting documentation may be required, including those for any combination foods served. This can include commercially prepared foods such as CN labels and product formulation statements, or written recipes for handmade foods. In some cases, a sponsor may have participants who require meal accommodations and modifications to the menu. In these cases, a medical statement will be required for meal accommodations for meals that will not meet the meal pattern due to these accommodations. Additional information on meal accommodations can be found on the ODE Meeting Meal Pattern Accommodations Requirements video, which is linked to in the description below. Sponsors are required to have accurate records justifying all meals claimed. Meal count records must be taken daily at each site for each meal and be based on accurate and actual point-of-service meal counts. Since camps may only claim meals served to children who are eligible for free or reduced price meals, the meal count system must be an actual meal count. The actual meal count is when meals are reported by the child's name. The SFSP Administrative Guidance Manual includes a sample actual meal count record. The eligibility of the individual child is not identified on the meal count form. Instead, the person responsible for reconciling the meal counts have the eligibility information for each child and counts only the meals and snacks served to eligible children for reimbursement. Meal counts are required to be taken at the point of service. The point of service is different between family style and cafeteria meal service. For family style meal service, the point of service meal count is conducted when a complete reimbursable meal is on the table in serving bowls or plates for the campers to serve themselves their meal. For cafeteria style meal service, the point of service meal count is conducted at the end of the cafeteria line once a reimbursable meal has been selected by the participant. The meal count must be done by marking each camper's name when they select or if they select a reimbursable meal. A sample meal count record is located in the sponsor's Administrative Guidance Manual. To conduct an actual point of service meal count, record all campers' names who are served a meal. The form must not identify campers' eligibility status. This means that the meal count record used by staff cannot show which campers are eligible for free or reduced price meals. Only staff involved in the meal count reconciliation and submitting the claim for reimbursement should know a camper's eligibility. Therefore, the actual meal count record must list all campers participating in the meal service. Complete the date of the meal service. Each meal or snack marked for a reimbursable meal for each camper at the point of service. At each end of each week, submit the form to the staff assigned to reconcile meal counts. This person will determine which camper's meals may be submitted for reimbursement. An easy way to document reimbursable meals is to highlight those meals that may be included on the meal claim. Sponsors are required to maintain proper sanitation and health standards at all sites. To document this, if a site has a sanitation inspection, the sponsor must save the inspection report showing that they are in compliance. If a site is not in compliance, the issues must be fixed and the site must be inspected again until it is fully in compliance. There are sanitation inspection reimbursements available for summer food service program sites. Documentation of the past inspection is required to be eligible to receive a reimbursement. Details on reimbursement are on the ODE CMP's SFSP webpage. Site monitoring of all sites is an SFSP requirement. Sponsors are required to visit new sites and sites with operational problems within the first 2 weeks of program operations and must conduct a full review of food service operations at all sites at least once during the first 4 weeks of program operations. The USDA site monitoring forms, the first 2-week visit, and site review form must be used unless prior approval is given by ODE for an equivalent sponsor-created form. The first 2-week visit, formerly known as the first week visit form, is shown on the left hand of the slide, and the first 4-week visit site review form is shown on the right-hand side of the slide. Both of these forms are available from the ODE CMP SFSP webpage. All sponsors are required to meet performance standards to ensure compliance with civil rights requirements. Civil rights documentation that must be kept include promotional materials, a written civil rights procedure, a civil rights log, and completed racial and ethnic data forms for each site. Additionally, sponsors of camps must collect and maintain the racial and ethnic category for each site separately for each session of the camp. Session means a specified period of time during which an enrolled group of children attend camp. The racial ethnic data form can be found with the site review form. Sponsors are required to maintain accurate records documenting that SFSP funds were only used for allowable program costs. Documentation that is required will include documentation of funds accrued to the program, operating and administrative costs, net cash resources, and nonprofit food service balance at the end of SFSP for the fiscal year. Funds accrued to the program include all funds that are received from federal, state, and local sources designated specifically for the SFSP. Examples of these funds include advances, reimbursement from meals served, and the additional 5 cents the Oregon legislature approved for each SFSP breakfast and lunch served. If the sponsor receives a Startup and Expansion, also known as the SUE grant, it is not required to be deposited into the Nonprofit Food Service or NPFS account. But if it is, then the SUE reimbursement funds and expenses must be tracked separately from SFSP reimbursement revenues and expenses. Documentation for funds accrued can include deposit records, voucher stubs, and receipts. Operating costs are those spent preparing and serving meals to eligible participants and program adults. If the sponsor has an SFSP budget, only costs on the approved SFSP budget are allowable costs. The required documentation for these costs can include receipts and invoices for food and non-food supplies, timesheets and payroll records for operational labor such as food preparation, payment records and rental agreements for food service space and equipment, and mileage and/or gas receipts for costs of transporting children to rural food service sites. Administrative costs are costs that are incurred by the sponsor for activities related to planning, organizing, and administering the program. Again, these costs must be included on the approved SFSP budget to be allowable. Some of the documentation that are required will include timesheets and payroll records for administrative labor, which this is labor for activities such as working on applications, site eligibility, training staff, or taking ODE trainings, monitoring sites, preparing bids, preparing claims, and other management tasks. Mileage logs may be required if there is administrative travel for training or monitoring. Receipts may be needed for office supplies that are purchased for program use. There may be additional documentation for rental costs for offices, office equipment needs, communication, insurance, audits, and more. When it comes to tracking SFSP funds, remember that all SFSP funds must be accounted for and that SFSP reimbursements must be used solely for conducting nonprofit food service operations. This means that sponsors will need to track any non-program and program components separately so you can be assured that SFSP funds are not used to support non-program food service activities, such as vending to non-SFSP programs, catering, or non-program adult meals. Sponsors are required to keep records for at least 3 years after the end of the fiscal year of operation. The retention period may be longer if there are unresolved review findings or investigations. If so, records must be kept until the review or investigation is complete. In addition to keeping the records, they must be available for any federal audits or ODE CMP administrative reviews. In summary, the training for camp sponsors included the definitions of camps in the SFSP, eligibility regarding sites and participants, meal reimbursement, meal service styles, and record-keeping requirements. If you have any questions about this training, please contact your assigned child nutrition specialist. ODE supports equity and excellence for every learner and seeks to work with school districts, education service districts, and community partners like you. We believe all children should have access to high-quality, well-rounded learning experiences. For ODE's full equity statement, check out the ODE equity page linked to in the description section below. This institution is an equal opportunity provider. Thank you for viewing this training.